Okay, today we're going to continue factoring, but you're going to notice that we're not always going to have a coefficient of 1 with the x squared. Okay, so do you remember all those times we looked for the GCF before we took the quiz, the greatest common factor? Okay, some of you aren't remembering. Let me remind you. What's the greatest common factor of what I just wrote down? Just 5. Okay. We need to always look for our GCF first. Okay. So we're going to get to a point where we have trinomials have a coefficient in front of x squared. So before we start factoring, I need you to look for a GCF first, and then we can attempt to factor. Okay. Okay, so there's construction happening at Hickory Hill, in which I live across the street from. My house was shaking like that on Friday. Like all of a sudden, like, my house would shake. There was jackhammers. I filled out a bracket, but I don't know if I'm ready to like really commit to it.
Yeah, K-State.
I got Iowa State over there.
Can't.
I got.
Yeah.
Iowa State is a
I actually think that that is a really good pick. Okay, so let's look at, go ahead and turn the page and let's look at number 1. So what I want you to make sure you do is first, you need to look for the GCF, okay? If there's no GCF, then we're going to factor our trinomial, okay? If there is a GCF, we need to get it out and then factor our trinomial. Yes. Okay, so Kyron is looking ahead, and Kyron has noticed that we have a GCF of 2 in number 1. Do you agree with Kyron? Okay, so if we factor out our GCF of 2, we have c squared minus 7c minus 18. Stop. Well, number 1, Eli's trying to write, and look at his beautiful handwriting. You're messing it up. Number 2, I don't want to hear the noise. You went somewhere with some sun, didn't you?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Dominican Republic.
That's right. The DR? You went to the DR? Okay. Now, c squared minus 7c minus 18. Can we factor this guy right here? Okay. What multiplies to negative 18 and adds to negative 7? What it multiplies to negative 18, but adds to negative 7.
Negative 9 plus 2.
Okay, so let's remember our first product, c times c, gives us c squared. Our last product, negative 9 times 2, gives us negative 18. Then we look at the inside and the outside. Those add up to be negative 7c.
Oh, I remember.
Okay, let's go to number 2. We're factoring. Do we have a GCF in number 2? So left over is a squared plus 2a minus. We have Harry here. So now, what multiplies to negative 35 but adds to 2?
-7 and +5.
So a minus 7, a plus 5, I don't agree.
Wait, all the way around.
A plus 7, a minus 5. All right, you try number 3. It's totally cool to check in with your elbow partner. No, it's looking at your work. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you should.
That would be fun. But since my husband coaches soccer, for the place. We will know later, but I agree. Coaching track would be fun. I don't know, or long distance. Then I can run with them. Harry, is there a GCF? What is it? Okay, so once we get the GCF out, DJ, what does this factor to? Give me a thumbs up if you agree with DJ. Give me a thumbs down if you disagree. Okay. Now here comes the fun part. All right. You know what? We're going to do number 12 first. And will you just kind of trust me?
What, number 12?
Yeah, will you trust me? Okay, we're gonna do number 12. Does number 12 have a GCF? It does not. But there's a coefficient with t squared. So we are not going to be able to use our trick of what multiplies to -9 and adds to 12. Okay. What is the only way to get 5t squared with these two terms right here? DJ? Okay, so we have 5t and 1t. We know that that is going to multiply to give us 5t squared. Okay. Now, we have a couple options for what we're going to put in other places. So we are going to have to do this with trial and error. Okay. We use pencil and math, especially in this chapter. Okay. So we know that whatever is multiplied here needs to give us -9. So let's just come up with two numbers that multiply to -9. So a +3 and a -3, right? Okay, well now let's check. What is 3 times t?
3T.
3t. What is 5t times -3? Okay. Do these two add up to be a +12? However,
-12T.
-12t. So since we're adding up to this number but opposite, what do we need to do? We just need to switch these signs right here. And now we're good with our FOIL. So this right here is our equal. Okay. When we have a coefficient with t squared, we are going to have to undo the puzzle and make sure it fits. It is possible. It is highly likely that you're not going to get it the very first time and you're going to have to erase and try again. We are going to have to be patient. Okay. So we're going to hop back to number 8. Okay. Is there a GCF in number 8? No. Okay. So we're going to have to think about two things. We're going to have to think about number 1. I need a product that gets me 6k squared. Okay. We have two different options, don't we? Let's start with 3k and 2k. I like to start with the numbers that are closer together. So 2 and 3 are closer together than 1 and 6. So this is where we're going to start. Okay. Now we need to multiply. We need to multiply here and here to get a +4. Now, do you notice that this middle term is negative? Yeah. Okay, so what's going to have to be true about both of these numbers? They both need to be negative. So what do you want to try? -2 and -2? Okay, well then this gives us -4k and this gives us -6k. Does that add to 11k? -11k. Okay, so let's try again. Okay, -4 and -1. So this is -8k and this is -3k. Do those add up to be -11k? Okay, so now we have our answer. The only thing that is different is we have to be a little bit more patient. We still are doing the reverse of our FOIL. Okay. We still need to make sure that when we FOIL, we get the same thing. Okay. We just need to be a little bit more patient. Okay. I'll give you a moment to try number 9. See what you can do. There is not a GCF sweetie because of this 2. Is 2 divisible by 9?
Can you drink water?
What?
Can you get a drink water?
Can you wait till we're done with the lesson?
Is this the last problem we're doing in this lesson?
1 times 1 is 2. Yeah.
Well, you gotta be.
Like on this one,
Mhm.
like the 3K and the 2. How do you
So what multiplies to be 9W squared?
three?
So I would do like 3W and 3W. Are you starting with 3W and 3W? Is it working? Okay, so then what are your non-W numbers? +1 and +2. So we get 9W squared and we get our 2. Here we get 3W and here we get 6W. Hey. Give yourselves a pat on the back if you got that. Okay, we're gonna take a vote. We're gonna do either number 10 or 11. Who votes for number 10? Who votes for number 11? Number 10 it is. All right. Okay. Number 1, do we have a GCF?
No.
Dang it. Okay, 12D squared. That's an A. 12A squared. What is one option that multiplies to 12A squared? 6 and 2. What else? 3 and 4 and 1 and 12. My suggestion is to start with what? The numbers that are closest together. Okay. And if it doesn't work, we can try 2 and 6. All right. Now, since this is a negative, what is it going to tell us about these numbers here that I have in green? They are different. Okay. So if we're going to multiply to -2, what two numbers multiply to -2? Okay, so I have -1 and a +2. Let's just see what happens. Okay. This gives us -4A, and this gives us 6A. Okay, so let's switch places. So let's try +2 and -1. See what that does. So this gives us 8A, and this gives us -3A. Hey! Hey, if I would have gotten a -5A, what would I have needed to do? Flip what? Flip the signs. If you get the right number, but it's opposite, just flip the positives and negatives. Okay. Hey, what's the only way to get better at this? Practice. Okay. Go to number 13. In number 13, is there a GCF? No. I disagree.
Oh, wait, never mind.
No. Do you notice how the coefficient of b squared is negative? That makes our problem really, really gross. So while it doesn't appear that there's a GCF, I'm going to have you take out a GCF of -1. That way, we can factor this so much better. Okay? If your leading coefficient is negative, you gotta factor that negative out. Otherwise, it is going to be a nightmare. Okay? It is going to be a nightmare. Okay? All right, so now we gotta factor this guy. Okay, to get 12b squared, where do you want to start? 3 and 4? Yeah. So 3b and 4b. Okay? To get -2, where do you want to start? -1 and +2. So let's see what we got here. 1?
No.
Okay. -4b, +6b. What? Oh, it is? Is it really?
Kinda. your new
That would be it. Oh, wait, yeah.
Okay,
Wait, no, it's a negative instead of a positive.
so this needs to be minus or plus? I forgot what we had.
1 and 2.
Okay. So then this gives us negative 8b and this gives us a positive 3b. So when I say, hey, what is this factor to? You gotta have that -1 out front. Okay, if you have a GCF, it still needs to live outside of your parentheses. I didn't even write this. Hold on. Okay. Would you prefer to do one more with a negative leading coefficient, or would you prefer to start practicing? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay. Guys, look, for Pi Day, I made cookies. No, for my